If you do not know me, I am Pia Silva. I help small service businesses badass their brands and find freedom in their lives. People who went into business for themselves because they love the thing that they do, the service they deliver. And I was realizing just recently that of course those are my people, because that's how I started my business. I had Steve, my partner, who was this amazing graphic designer, and I wanted to build a business around him. He didn't want to build a business at all. He just wanted to design and be creative. Anyone who's watching, tell me if that's you. You're somebody who didn't go into business because you really want to build a business and that you're like, oh, but now I got to build this business that I wasn't expecting to necessarily. It's so funny how over the years, even though that might seem so obvious, I keep learning these things and the specifics about who I'm speaking to and who my message resonates with. I keep learning it over and over again, which is about sounding like a Me Too brand. It's a challenge that so many entrepreneurs that I interact with have, because so many of the people that I attract are people who love what they do. Business was a byproduct. And so they're stuck very deeply in this service that they love, and they've got to do this other part. And one of the consequences of that is struggling to figure out exactly what makes you different. You end up becoming a Me Too brand, because when people start businesses, let's say you're somebody who goes to business school and then you start a business because you want to be a business owner. There's a totally different approach to starting a business like that. You sit down and think about an opportunity in the market where there's something different, and then you create a business for that. So you're literally starting the business partially by figuring out what is a not Me Too idea. And we don't have that luxury because we didn't go into business for that reason. So anyway, I just realized that as I'm saying it, but it is a totally different approach. And that's one reason that I think a lot of us end up with a Me Too brand. So let's take a step back. What am I talking about when I say a Me Too brand? I'm not talking about a hashtag Me Too brand. I'm talking about a brand where everything you're saying is similar, if not the same as all of your competitors. And I was stuck in that rut for many years. Here's what that looked like for me. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that everybody listening, especially creatives, had the exact same experience. So let's put it to the test. Did you have this exact experience that we had? So first I say, okay, Steve, you're really talented. I'm going to start a business around you. I'm going to go get clients. So I go start hustling, looking for clients. I'm on Craigslist. I'm networking. I'm out there. And every single time somebody asks me, what do you do? I fumble a little bit, but I'm like, oh, we do everything. We can design logos. We can design websites. We can design business cards, really whatever you need, because we technically can. He's a graphic designer, so we could do anything. Oh, okay, but that's not good enough. You need to tell us what makes you better than every other graphic designer. Oh, okay, our work is really good. Let's take a step back for a second and dissect that. I really internally believed that to my core. And let me tell you a little side story about even how this all came about. Steve, I think he's very talented. I am biased, but I've thought he was talented since the day I met him. Actually, the day I met him, I Googled him, and look, can you see that painting in the back there? Do you see that beautiful painting back there? That's what came up when I Googled Steve, and I fell in love with that painting. I thought that was the most beautiful thing, and he gave it to me. He came and brought it to me on the subway the next week, and obviously it is my prized possession. Okay, obviously I think he's very talented, and that is not a non sequitur. That was the reason that I told people we were so much better. I said, Steve is an artist. That's a beautiful painting, but he can actually draw real things too. He's an illustrator, and he brings all of this artistic talent to the table. And that's why we're better, because he really has a wide perspective. Oh, and he studied art history. So he's got all this art knowledge. Literally, you can see how I would go on and on trying to explain all these reasons why we're clearly better than the competition. But not just that. I pride myself on being very responsible and organized and communicative. So you don't just get this amazing artist, you also get me, who will answer the phone at any hour of the day or night. I will get back to you very quickly. I will do what I say. I'm awesome. You need something on Saturday night? I'm there. I'm crouched in the doorway of the restaurant trying to get you what you need because I care that much. Anybody here offer those things as part of what makes you valuable? That you're just much better creatively, or that you like really are there and attentive and you really care. I thought those were valuable reasons to work with us. And I'm not saying that they aren't value that we offer. I'm just saying that I was stuck in this rut of really believing that was what made us better and then trying to explain it. And I am trying to take a survey here because assuming a lot of you also feel that things like that are what make you better, that's how we're all ending up saying the same stuff. Because I was saying those two things, I ended up bargaining my prices a lot. That's the word. Clients would say, oh, can you do it for this? Can you do it for that? And I was always willing to shift my prices or do it for less or whatever it was because I also needed to compete on the price. So this is what it looks like trying to do all those things. Our website had pages and pages of work because if our work being good was what was different about us, then we had to show lots and lots of beautiful work, right? Pages and pages. Here's all the beautiful logos we've made. Here's all the beautiful websites we've made. Okay, mistake number one, but we can talk about that later. The second thing was willing to bring my prices down because that didn't feel like I could get the business if I kept the prices high. And then of course, me being attentive, me being responsible, that was another reason we were great. So what did that mean? It meant that I was hustling for people all the time. Literally, we were on our honeymoon in Mexico. We got married in Mexico and we just stayed there for our honeymoon. We had rented this like palapa on the beach with no electricity. And I kid you not, we are in this palapa on the beach with no electricity. And I am sitting at night in the dark because there's no electricity, but there's like a Wi-Fi station by the entrance. In the dark, on the sand, on my laptop, trying to send somebody files that like they needed, that was not even they needed because of me. They just needed them. That was how I operated because that was what I thought was the value that I had to offer. And that was like my value add. Okay, so why did I end up bending around everybody and trying to do all of these things at once to be better? I think it's because we all ask ourselves the same questions and we end up getting the same answers. So for example, most of these branding questions are going to ask you things like, what's your value proposition? What is it that you bring to the table that nobody else does? Those are the questions that I was answering. That's how I ended up with these answers of all the talent, all the artistic talent, and I care so much and I'm so responsible. They're crappy answers. And a lot of people can say them. And the worst part about it is, even though a lot of people can say them, it doesn't mean that it's true. I've seen a lot of other designers say that their designs are better. And I am like, those are not good. So you can say all you want that your work is good, but my opinion is that it's not good. Or I have tons of people who I've even hired who say that being responsive and attentive and communicative, that's what makes them better. And then they just aren't. They like literally aren't. And I need to work on this. I always get like frustrated. Like they told me they were going to be attentive and responsible and they're not. But it turns out you can say that stuff and it doesn't mean that you are those things. And that's a real problem for all of us who are trying to differentiate ourselves because we might say something that really is true and we're amazing at being attentive or like being talented, but other people can also say it and they might not be as good as you. And as the client, as the prospect, I can't tell the difference. So we need to take on different strategies for this. We need to take different approaches to find the way that we are different from them and to not be Me Too brands. So here's the crux of it. The reason that I believe we are all stuck and struggling in this Me Too rut is because we're all answering the same questions that don't really give us a lot of opportunity to differentiate. What's your value proposition is like the most boring question that everybody is going to have a pretty boring answer to. What I have found is that the key to this is not to try to come up with a different answer, because that didn't work for me. I don't know if that's working for anybody here. Please tell me if you were able to answer that easily and quickly and in a different way. But instead, I found that the approach that one must take if you want to find that differentiation is to take a completely different approach. So one of the things that I've done and have found is critical is the question asking. So you can't ask yourself the same questions. It's the act of asking yourself lots of different questions from lots of different angles, and the act really of answering those questions that will help you find that niche and that differentiation. It's a really nuanced and deep work, but it's the only way to go deep to find the thing that is different for you. And even as I showed on the beginning of this call, here I am, this is what I do, and I am still constantly going deeper into the nuances of who I'm talking to and why it's important for them and what value I have to offer and what makes me different. This is an evolutionary process. It's not just a one and done. It's not, here's my value proposition, oh, I found it, okay, that's it. So the process of both asking ourselves lots of different questions and the exploration of answering those questions, it is the work that helps you differentiate and get away from the Me Too brand. Most people aren't willing to do that work. That's why most people have Me Too brands, because they stay surface. What's your value proposition? Oh, I'm an illustrator and my designs are better. Period. That's it. We need to go deeper than that. So I want to share a couple of examples, some you might not know. One of them is a shining example for me, a financial company that we worked with. And the reason it's such a shining example is they were trying to do things differently from the classic financial model. So they were from Merrill Lynch and they wanted to be this cool hip brand, not Merrill Lynch. But like all of us, they were asking themselves, oh, what's my value proposition? And the value proposition, we're a cooler version of Merrill Lynch. So they were still thinking in the framework of Merrill Lynch. And the reason asking themselves different questions that were very uncomfortable, by the way, very uncomfortable, questions that financial institutions don't ask themselves. That's how we ended up finding their special sauce, part of which was offering this financial plan that they charge for, that other people don't charge for. And it was the process of asking questions that were uncomfortable and that were not usually asked in the financial sector that led us to that conclusion and that opportunity. And it wasn't just finding that opportunity, it was taking it by the reins and going with it all the way. That something that their industry doesn't do. So being willing to do the deep work, find the opportunities, and then go full force with them and not stop. With all of these things together is what built them into a brand that very much magnetically attracts ideal clients who are buying something that nobody else is selling. Do you see the patterns here? But it took breaking through the existing framework and thinking of what a financial institution is supposed to be and look like. And that's something we can all do by asking ourselves questions that might be outside of what our industry does. My company is a perfect example too. We do these really intensive branding projects. And when I first told graphic designers and branding agency owners that we were moving into this, they were like, that's not possible. You cannot take somebody through a process in such a short amount of time and have them be happy at the end. So do you see how they were limited in what they thought was possible for their industry, and how if we looked outside of that and said, okay, forget what we think this is supposed to look like. Let's ask ourselves questions from completely different perspectives. One of the questions we were asking is, what do we want exactly? What do we want this to look like? What are we really good at? Forget the work itself. What are we actually really good at? Steve and I are really good at working really intensively for long periods of time. Not everybody is good at that. Not only are we good at it, we thrive on it and we like it. That's not something that everybody does. That didn't become our value proposition, but it got us a little bit closer to what made us different. So you see, it's a little bit of a meandering path, but that work is what's going to get you there. I have found so many people who take those questions, they're like, man, just answering these questions got me so much clarity. And it's the question asking, and it's something only you can take the time to do. Can you see this? Yeah. This chart is illustrating what I'm talking about here. I love this chart. I'm sure you've seen something like this before. How knowledge works. So there's the things that we know, right? That's a lot of the stuff that we do, that we're experts at. That goes in that little pie of what we know. Then there is the stuff that we know we don't know. Plenty of stuff out there we know we don't know. I know I don't know anything about physics, being a physicist. I know I don't know anything about being a doctor. Plenty of stuff we know we don't know. But then there's this huge part of the pie, bigger than the other two pieces combined, which is all this stuff we don't know, we don't know. And that is the stuff that asking yourself lots of questions that might not lead you directly to the answer, but might lead you to another space, which could lead you to another space, which could lead you to the answer. That's the space that we want to play in. I know this is a really abstract concept. It's a little heady, but I think you guys can handle it. I think that what I wanted to do today was just communicate how there's such a big opportunity there. If you take anything away from this video today, I wanted to open your mind to the fact that getting into that uncomfortable stuff and asking different questions and exploring different ideas, that's where you get out of the Me Too brand. And you have to be willing to do that work, and you have to be willing to keep going toward it. And it's not comfortable many times. And I am constantly doing it, and I am constantly uncomfortable about it. So I am not saying it's easy, but if that is why so many people are stuck in the Me Too brand, because they're not willing to go farther than that. And I wanted to share a couple other stories that came to me while I was just jotting down some notes about today. One of them is, if you don't know, Steve Jobs surveyed, before the iPhone came out, surveyed a whole bunch of Apple users about the iPhone. He said, I want to make this device that has a phone, a camera, and your music on it. And everyone said, we don't want it. No, we don't want that. I don't know why they said that. It's unfathomable at this point to think that people would think they didn't want that, but they said they didn't want it. And Steve Jobs said, I don't care what they think. They want this. And he put it out there, and obviously the iPhone was born and took over the world. But isn't that so fascinating? He was tapping into something that people didn't know they didn't know that they wanted. And that is so brilliant, and allowed him to create something that's so starkly stood out from what existed up until that point. So I think that's a really great inspirational story. And the other one that, if you don't know this story, this is amazing. I forget his name, but the guy who broke the 4-minute mile. What an inspirational story this is. I think it was like in the 1950s. Before this guy ran the 4-minute mile, it was considered impossible to run a mile in 4 minutes. And he did it. And while that's great, he broke the record. 2 months later, 2 more people broke that record. 2 more people ran a mile in less than 4 minutes. And since then, thousands of people have broken that record, and the record has gone down and down. But what's amazing about that story is it's like it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile until he made it possible. And so he was able to tap into this thing that we didn't know, which is that was possible. And until then, people thought that wasn't possible. But once he made it possible, a bunch of people were able to do it. This is getting really dramatic, but I think we could take it there. I think everybody's business has the opportunity to go somewhere special like that. Looking for the thing you don't know is like deciding that it is possible to run the 4-minute mile, even though everyone's saying it's not. And then once you run it, you'll see all other people will pop up. I've seen that in my business. I can't take full credit for popularizing the word badass, but you better believe that when I was saying it at first, people thought that was not okay to say. And now it's like everyone says it. Somebody has to break those barriers and to allow it to be possible for everyone else. And then, by the way, once that happens, we need to break the next barrier. So it's a constant hustle in that respect, because as you make things possible and you create something new and special, there's going to be a bunch of people trying to copy it. So even the act of doing this work gets you better and better at being able to do it, which is going to continually be valuable and necessary in this quickly evolving world that we live in. All right, now I can go off in a totally other direction that I'm not going to go off into today. All right, guys, I truly appreciate you joining me today. Have a great day, guys.